Chuck, why don't we begin by having you introduce yourself?
Okay, I am Chuck Linderman. I've had a diagnosis that goes back more than about 14 years now that put me into this adventure of life that I had not expected to have. But I've learned how to address this and do as good a job as I can, maintaining my life, keeping going, and it's left me with several clear convictions, John. One, personal exercise is crucial to success in holding Parkinson's at bay because of the additional dopamine that the brain creates when you're working hard at it. Two, activity is crucial because we need to be involved with others, and so that we are getting feedback for how we're doing. And it's just a heck of a lot easier to go on with others that you know are doing the same thing rather than trying to do it by yourself. I've got two kids that are sometimes around, but not an awful lot right now. And I count Wilma as my caregiver. She's my spouse of 38 years at this point. And overall, I'd say that Parkinson's has not hit me as hard as it could. And I look at some of the other people in the various support groups and exercise classes, and you can look around the room and you know who's working hard at keeping this thing at bay. And I don't believe you can just namby-pamby this and go rely upon the drugs that are so readily available, but you have to be a vigorous exerciser.
Chuck, the one thing that comes through loud and clear, of course, is exercise. But the other message you're conveying, to me at least, is that you've taken responsibility for your therapy and not just left it to your doctors to give you pills or otherwise tell you what to do. Is that fair?
That's very fair, John. In fact, the first neurologist and the guy who diagnosed me with Parkinson's, who did it in about 15 minutes, didn't offer me any particular guidance on what and how to do it. And I got more of that guidance from the person who was then and is now my personal trainer, because his mother has Parkinson's.
This is Rob?
Rob. And he knew what to do and how to challenge me so that to make me respond positively in a way that would yield results.
Can you explain in simple terms what he challenged you to do?
He was very plain that I was going to have to fight this thing and be very devoted to the regime of exercise. And every week, twice a week for the last 14 or 15 years, I've worked out with this guy. And I think it shows on me. And many, many people come up to me in the gym and they say, what an inspiration I am. And I look at them and say, how can you tell me I'm an inspiration to people? Well, and evidently the thing that strikes them is that people that are approaching 70 are not supposed to be in gyms according to common social mores. But it is that devotion and direction, self-directed, that I think, and both my primary care doctor and neurologist would tell you that that's what's made the difference in my status today. Because I think both of them have said to me in so many words, Chuck, if you hadn't been working out as much and as hard as you do, you would either be in a care facility in a wheelchair, or cremated. And that lays it out for you very clearly.
Chuck, you engage in a form of exercise that most people don't. Most people with Parkinson's don't. That is, you're rowing. Could you explain a little bit what that's all about?
Sure. I was rowing before I had this label slapped on me, and I can have continued it. And rowing is probably as physical a sport as there is in the Olympics, and it requires a lot of people think it's an upper body strength sport, when in fact it's a leg strength sport, which is really good for Parkinson's, because it seems that the legs are what goes first in Parkinson's. I've done it now in 8s, in 4s, and quads, and doubles, and a single. And it's getting in condition to be able to race or row 500 or meters to 1,000 meters competitively against other people that are carrying handicaps of various sorts. And you need a lot of practice, because you're trying to get the so-called swing of the stroke in perfect harmony with the other person or persons in the boat, as well as being cognizant of what's going on the water around you, and knowing when to do what.
You can't just zone out and row. You have to think.
It's a thinking person's sport, yes.
I think that is helpful for Parkinson's. My own experience, as I told you earlier, has been with boxing, where I have to think about arms and legs at the same time, which puts me in a position that I'm ordinarily not in, where if I'm just walking, I just think about my legs, or if I'm just lifting, I think about my arms. But boxing requires me to think about everything. Fortunately, one thing I don't have to think about is someone hitting me. The trainer I work with is very good about assuring me that I'm the one that's doing the boxing, not him.
Good.
I think I'd be in real trouble if I had to actually face a competitive boxer in the ring. But I enjoy learning new exercises. That's part of the adventure that we're both on.
Yes, it is, and it certainly is an adventure.
Have you learned anything about yourself as a result of this disease that you didn't know when it began?
Certainly I've learned some things about myself that I didn't know before I began. One of them, I would say, is dedication to a specific sport, and putting that so that everything else follows that, and that the other things that are going on here don't supersede the commitment to that. That's probably been the one thing that I have learned faster than anything else. Is this is numero uno, and it doesn't matter what else follows, but they are not as important.
If you were to meet someone who has just been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and the person knew nothing about Parkinson's, what advice would you give to that person?
My unvarnished advice would be, get yourself into a gym as the next thing you do. Before you go back to the office, before you go home, that's what you owe it to yourself to do. And it really doesn't make a lot of difference whether it's Gold's or Planet Fitness or an LA gym or any of the other big chains. You need to be someplace where you can be around other people who are exercising and who value that, and see if you can get some stimulation and training in how this body works mechanically.
You seem to be saying it's much less important that you go to a Parkinson's expert than you go to someone who's an exercise expert.
I would say you go to the exercise expert. because I've been to some classes for Parkinson's patients and exercise classes for Parkinson's patients. I'm not impressed.
I have to say I agree with you. The problem with the classes is that they're geared to the people who are least adept at exercise, and not to someone like you who has really made exercise the key to his or her treatment. So you need to be challenged. You need to be challenged, and a program that's geared to other people doesn't necessarily challenge you.
Yeah, and that's the thing I noticed is that in a couple of cases I've been to Parkinson's exercise classes where basically the whole thing is seated. And that may be fine for some people, but it doesn't accomplish one of the key things that exercise is supposed to do. Raise your heart rate and be very stimulating as to what you can do with the body.
I think that's very sound advice. So, apart from exercise, what have been the most rewarding activities that you've engaged in to deal with Parkinson's? Maybe getting a good night's sleep.
Yeah, a good night's sleep would help, and that's something is hard to get when you've got Parkinson's.
Right.
But the thing that I've found most rewarding thus far is to look people in the eye and ask them what they're doing. What are you doing? And not to sugarcoat it or anything like that, but you don't want people to be so focused on what's going on with my body that they can't see beyond the immediate challenge and find a way to fight with it themselves. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense. I think what you're saying is every patient has to assume responsibility for his own care or her own care. And they do that in various ways that vary from individual to individual.
Yes, they do.
Chuck, has it ever been difficult to maintain your morale?
Occasionally, I get little snippets that would try and argue with me that this is a hopeless effort. But I don't believe it. And I know that my understanding of my relationship with my being, with God, gives me more power than all this material jazz to put together. And I think there is a spiritual side of this that you can't ignore, because you're moving into a change where most people would say this body is going to go bye-bye, or would want it to go bye-bye. And I find when I separate the mortal self and try and dwell on the immortal side, that provides me with a great deal of strength, hope, and an understanding that man is not just made out of brain, blood, and bones. And I think that with this thing is particularly important. If there's a time when my morale gets affected, it's in those few times when I ask my wife for something and she takes forever to get it done or doesn't want to do it or something like that. That drives me harder on my morale than anything else, I think.
Sometimes it's the simple things, like buttoning. I asked Joanne to button my cuffs this morning.
Mm-hmm.
That gets me down because it's so simple. And it's aggravating to have to ask your wife to do things that are so easy. Should be so easy.
I know.
It must help your morale that your exercise regime works. If it didn't work, you probably wouldn't feel quite so positive about it.
That's probably true, John. But an exercise regime doesn't start by instantly working either. And you've got to work at it.
Well, you were fortunate you had Rob to guide you at the beginning. But I think ultimately it comes down to your own persistence and conviction, not Rob's or your doctor's or anyone else's.
That's true. And I'm not sure how much conviction I have with where the doctors are these days.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when I look at what's going on in most of the medical offices, at least that I've been in or seen, it's an attention to trying to figure out what will make the patient comfortable and peaceful for a short time. And it's done on an incremental basis. There doesn't seem to be, in most of the medical community, any desire to take a quantum leap or a major step into that which could really change the world in which the Parkinson's patients are living.
You mentioned to me that you were involved in taking some new experimental drug. If that's successful, will that result in a quantum leap, or is that the incremental change that you've been referring to?
Should I be so fortunate as to be told by the Scripps Institute in La Jolla, California, that they want to use me as one of their early trials or what have you for their stem cell approach to this, I'm going to do it. Even if it's a risk, according to some people, that the stem cell approach won't work and it may make you worse. I'm ready to try it.
Ready to try it.
I am willing to do it.
Would you say you're willing to try it out of desperation or out of conviction?
Conviction.
Chuck, thank you very much. It's been a great interview. I really enjoyed getting to know you and talking to you.
Appreciate it very much, John. Thank you so much for writing this book, and I look forward to seeing it in print.